Mealy is president and principal investigator of Lavender Medical and clinical professor of psychiatry at the University of Hawaii. He has conducted over 300 clinical research studies in Hawaii for global pharmaceutical companies. He was formerly chief of Hawaii's mental health division and the founder and director of psychiatric services at Castle Medical Center. He also chairs the Halakukua Executive Committee, which is the sponsor of this speaker series. So you are in excellent hands tonight. Dr. Mealy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jane. Wow, what an introduction, and so pleased to be here, but so glad to see so many names that I recognize, some that I don't. So I'm really hoping that we can have a pretty informal chat tonight about a subject that's, I know, as you say, Jane, is pretty serious and pretty prevalent right now. So hopefully we can join together and share and maybe learn something together, and particularly, I guess, find something that we can apply to ourselves right now, to our family. And that's what I truly hope it would be, not anything too formal with lots of information, but stuff that's really relevant to what we're all dealing with right now. So let's look at our slides here. And, you know, I've sort of been saying to some folks, I don't know what your experience has been, all of you, during the course of this COVID. For a long time, I would say, are you suffering, or do you know someone in your family that's had COVID, or some friends? And a lot of people were saying, no. You know, I see quite a few people every day, and nobody seemed to know anyone who was experiencing COVID, or in a direct or fairly close way. Yesterday, I was talking to a lady who was living in a house with 8 people, and 4 had just come from the mainland and visited them, and I guess stayed with them for a little while. After they left, the 12 of them were positive for COVID. So you can just imagine what kind of impact that would have on that group, that family, that extended family. And just today, I was talking to a guy whose father is on a ventilator and is probably going to die any day. So I guess it brings it much closer to home when we meet people, know people, certainly if you have a family member who's affected by this serious illness. So it's affecting a lot of people physically. So we're seeing major issues occurring in the lives of folks, many of them dying. But of course, all of us are experiencing some kind of emotional reactions. So we're going to look at those emotional concomitant experiences that people are having with this condition right now. So let's have a look at, if we can make this slide progress. So Jane just mentioned a number of the negative things that we're all experiencing. And I thought maybe just for a moment, I would ask you all to maybe just share a word, a phrase. Don't go any long talking, but let's see if we can all say something that we see that's negative going on in our lives right now with this COVID. So turn your mics off and mention something that's not going so good or that's affecting you. I think Jane mentioned a number of them, but for you, what is not going good right now? What's a negative influence on you right now? Let's hear from you.
I can't see
Come
my
on.
family.
Sorry?
I can't see my family in the mainland.
That's a very real one, right? Yes, good, very good. What else?
The kids are home, learning from home.
And that seemed to be a real common problem, right? Dealing with the kids, but also trying to be their teacher. Come on, folks, this is just to get us going, realizing this is an interactive process. What else?
I think for me, the lack of community or integration with communities difficult.
Yep. We all depend on that social contact and interaction. It's not happening right now.
You all can write it in the chat boxes too if you feel more comfortable with that.
Real human connections. You can have
Yes.
love, you can, and sometimes you can't even hug them because you're afraid that something might go wrong.
Stress from hypervigilance.
It's always kind of on alert, right? And yep. Anything else? Inability to travel. That's another real one. Some of us haven't known what rock fever was until now, right?
Sharon writes from people not wearing masks.
Yes, it's amazing how that stirred so much energy in the interaction between people.
Oh, and this too, being near people is nice, but now it's potentially deadly. And stress from differing perceptions of the risks of COVID. That's true. I've never known so many different opinions about, the risks of this.
Yep. We all have.
I think a big one is the fear that has been instilled in everyone. I mean, just taking a stroll to Windward Mall and just people passing by, you don't have the same type of feeling that you used to. You're always wondering, gee, wonder if that person that just coughed or etc. So you're just kind of keeping your distance, even though you're supposed to. But there's an element of fear that has been instilled in everyone to some degree or some level. Some a little, some a lot, but that's what I see.
No, I think that's.
And George,
Yeah.
George writes that worry that any set of symptoms could be COVID.
And isn't that common? You get a little cough and you wonder, right? Someone right near you has a cough. It's an issue. So we could probably mention a whole bunch of things, but what about the let's see here, make this thing work. So what about what we're reacting to? What are some of the emotions that we're experiencing because of these things? Any comments on what you're feeling, what emotions you're experiencing?
Did I say fear?
I guess fear is definitely an emotion, right? Yeah. What else?
Say frustration.
Frustration, yep.
Anxiety.
Huh?
Anxiety is in the chat.
Yep.
I think also sort of like a feeling helpless. Things are not within our control.
Yep.
Confusion.
Yeah, so all kinds of different feelings, emotions that I think we're having right now. And so it would be natural that we will go into thinking, what do we do about this? And so what are some positive actions we might do? So let's not answer this one right now, but maybe when we get to the end, I want to just spend a few minutes on what might we do? What are some positive ways to balance the negatives that we're experiencing right now? And I think that's kind of brings it back down to right now, right me, my family. What are some of the positives? So be thinking about that as we go through this and try to identify some things that maybe you could do positively that would deal with this. So what really is going on? And these figures change from time to time, and maybe we have read different rates, but probably at least 2/3 of us, I don't know what any other guesses would be about that. But I think we all get feelings of stress and anxiety, and we're worried and so forth to some degree at some times. But probably 2/3 of us are having those feelings ongoing, relatively frequently, fairly strong. So fairly significant stress and worry being experienced by 2/3 of us. To the degree that it's sort of impacting the life in some way, probably at least 1/3 of us could say that, wow, this is a fairly significant amount of emotional reaction I'm having and kind of worries me. So at least 1/3 of us are having that kind of response. Anxiety, maybe 40%. Again, talking about maybe persisting anxiety. I think it'd be probably none of us that would say that we haven't had any anxiety, because this is a anxiety producing time. So, but maybe 40% of us, 4 out of 10, have a level of anxiety that's pretty significant and pretty intrusive. And depression, which usually runs about 9% of the population, data that's kind of emerging suggests that 29% of folks are pretty noticeably depressed right now. So affecting quite a lot of us to a reasonably strong degree, to the point that a lot of the professionals working this now are coining all sorts of terms like chronophobia, which may be a new word that we add to our dictionary. But chronophobia, these are some of the thoughts and feelings that people are identifying from the professional perspective of what is being experienced by large segments of the population. Obsessive thoughts and behaviors, thoughts that go round and round in our head, hard to get rid of. They're obsessional to the degree that they somehow take our energy and time. Sometimes behavior, so sometimes that necessary cleaning ends up being obsessive cleaning, or going and doing other things that maybe don't then become as necessary, but become somewhat obsessive. Certainly a general sense of distress is very common. Avoidance reaction. So you find that some folks, when you talk to them about coronavirus, say, I'm not experiencing anything. I don't see what all the big fuss is about. Is it really going on? We call that kind of an avoidance reaction. Tend to think it's not there, avoid the reality, but certainly is kind of another manifestation of this. Panic and anxiety we've kind of referred to. Anxiety, you know, is more an ongoing feeling. Panic usually comes in waves. So we have panic attacks, and that's when the anxiety rises to quite high levels. Panic usually is anxiety that develops rapidly. So the slope is quite steep in developing a panic attack, and then it lasts through several minutes or a little longer, and then usually fades. That's sort of a panic attack. Anxiety is generally a more persistent feeling of anxious feeling. Hoarding is another thing that some folks are doing. Well, of course, it was a fairly natural reaction at the beginning that we were hoarding toilet paper and all these other kinds of things. But some people continue to do that, just the what ifs, right? You know, we know that hoarding is a condition that's certainly a pathological condition that we often deal with in psychiatry, when people hold things, store things, pack things within the house just in case, as it were. They're the hoarders, and quite a significant obsessive compulsive condition to deal with. But we're seeing more of it during this corona thing. Paranoia, that fear that's pretty normal right now of catching the virus, can extend to something that we would call a paranoia that becomes unrealistic, a fear of a whole variety of possibilities that can become part of this chronophobia. Depression usually is when a lot of these feelings persist. You know, you usually talk about anxiety as the fear of something that we might think is going to happen. So it's the anticipation. So we get anxious when we got to give a speech, or we got to do an exam, or meet a new friend, or a new somebody. And that kind of anxiety is normal anxiety. So it's the apprehension of something that might happen. Depression, though, is the sense that it has happened, that there is now no real hope about something. So anxiety, it tends to occur at the beginning. That's what a lot of us are feeling now. Depression probably will develop more as this thing goes on, and we go to the point of just fearing what is going to happen, to accepting that bad has happened and it's going to get actually worse and more difficult for us. So let's just try to define anxiety and depression a little bit more. In psychiatry, of course, we have pretty tight definitions of an anxiety disorder or depression disorder. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but what are some of the symptoms that comprise anxiety? What are the symptoms that comprise depression? Now, we've done a lot of studies on depressive disorder, anxiety disorder. It's interesting when we're asking people to volunteer to try a new antidepressant. When we put in the newspaper the symptoms of depression, it's amazing how many people call up and say, I have those symptoms, but I never knew that I was depressed. So it's very easy to have certain kinds of phenomena occurring, but not really calling it depression. The same with anxiety. So let's just look quickly at maybe how we define more specifically the manifestations of anxiety. So if we talk about mood, in anxiety, we can be irritable, agitated. It's a variable kind of mood that we can have. It's very much up and down. It can go from being more irritable, less irritable, not irritable, more agitated, whatever. Depression, on the other hand, I don't know if you can see that, if these names are in the way. I think we can move them, but, and I am having trouble finding mine. Let's see. So depression is, the mood is more sad and hopeless. So this is, like I said, the sense that the worst has happened, or we just got to accept the worst now. So we have a feeling of sadness, hopelessness as part of our mood in depression. So it's a little different from anxiety. Now, often anxiety and depression go together. So if you're looking at what you're experiencing, you might have some of both sides of this, and that overlap between anxiety and depression is very common. What's our thinking? So in anxiety, we're fearing, we're worrying, we're obsessing about things. In depression, we often have more worthless kinds of thoughts. We don't feel good about ourselves. We don't feel good about our surroundings. So there's more a worthless and a hopeless kind of a feeling that can be part of our thinking. We can even have suicidal thoughts as part of our depression condition. What about concentration? In anxiety, we can have difficulty focusing, keeping to one theme or another. In depression, we usually have very poor ability to concentrate. We have low interest, low motivation. A lot of the things that we could do and focus on, we can't do when we're depressed. And similarly with energy, in anxiety, it can be variable, it can be inconsistent. But in depression, our energy level is usually, and this is pretty generalized, we have low energy, we feel apathetic. We don't feel that we can do the things that we normally were able to do. And our motor activity, our movements, in anxiety, we can be very restless and tense. In depression, usually our movements are slowed down. So everything is retarded. Everything is less active. We can't move around. We can't do the things that we normally would do. In our appetite, our weight certainly can be more or less or the same with anxiety, but in depression, it's usually either very increased in our appetite and weight or decreased. So some people with depression hardly eat at all, lose a lot of weight. Some people just keep eating, hoping to solve that horrible depression feeling, and they put on weight. So both ends of that spectrum occur with appetite and weight. Sleep, usually in anxiety, we're thinking, we're worried, so we usually sleep less. In depression, we can go either way. So we can have trouble sleeping because we are more worried. Sometimes we sleep a lot to try to get rid of that feeling of depression. So we could go into those characteristics a lot more, but generally some sense of where you stand in that spectrum of conditions. So I want to talk quite a lot tonight about what I think is important in terms of our emotional state and how it so closely ties in with our physical. And this is a concept that many of us have seen, but the sense that the whole person is really made up of the mental, the emotional, the feelings, but they're closely tied to our physical self, to our social self, our interactions that we're seeing are disrupted right now, and to our spiritual, our sense of faith or belief in something higher in our lives. And those things, much more than I think we've realized in the past, tie together in a manner that really you can't separate them. And they interplay and affect each other, each characteristic in ways that are truly important then in seeing how we deal with feelings of anxiety, feelings of depression, obsessional feelings. We can't avoid looking at physical aspects of our life, social aspects, and spiritual life. So I'm going to talk about those areas that affect our emotions, because that's the theme tonight. But a lot of the things that we might do to help our emotions also help our physical self, also improve our relationships, and play a lot into our spiritual life as well. And back and forth. So these are interactional things. They go both ways. And so that concept I just want to spend a few minutes on because I think it's really important. It's something that I've come to realize more and more in my practice of medicine and in my own personal life, that this whole person concept is very, very important. And growing in understanding and importance of how it affects our emotions. Some of us know that as New Start, and that's an acronym that you might get to know more because we're going to talk about each of those NEWSTART. It just is it's an acronym that represents maybe how we can address what to do to help the whole person. And I've really become more and more impressed with my readings, with working with patients about how these things interplay. So let's go through these kind of quickly. I know we don't have a lot of time because I really do want us to talk more about these things and ask questions. So I'm going to go through this quite quickly, but N stands for nutrition. And yes, there's lots of aspects of nutrition that are important for our physical health, but really truly affect our emotional health too very, very much. So if we're talking about we're feeling anxiety, depression, obsessional thoughts, too much worry, whatever right now, these are things that you can do right now. These are things that I'm doing and learning to do right now that can make a major difference in your levels of anxiety, in your levels of depression. And by the way, can help a great deal in building your immunity to avoid catching the COVID-19 virus. So these are ideas. Some of them are well researched, some of them are not well researched yet. Now, it's kind of hard to get pharmaceutical companies where I have worked with extensively in the last 20, 30 years, hard to get pharmaceutical companies and even government to invest a lot of money in researching issues about diets or issues about other vitamins and minerals and other things, because there's not, frankly, much commercial interest in doing those things. But let's go through these quickly. This is recommending the yes here is if you do something that moves towards a plant-based diet, whether you go all the way to a vegan diet or vegetarian or a Mediterranean diet, there's been a lot of research on Mediterranean diets and how it affects our mood, how it helps anxiety, how it helps depression. And this study here, the SMILES one that was recently done in Geelong in Australia, looked at Mediterranean diets and how depression levels actually came down significantly when people were on a Mediterranean diet. And that's been also demonstrated for vegan diets, vegetarian diets, has a lot to do with emotions as well as physical health. I'm underlying the emotional benefits, but really, truly, a lot of benefit in leaning this way. I know it's not easy. I wasn't very good at vegan, vegetarian leanings for a long time. I have a wife now who some of you know helps nudge me in these directions. And I appreciate it because I feel a lot better moving in this direction. But there's research on it. There's a lot more studies. And I'm just putting up some studies because to show you that there is a basis for a lot of these findings that can make a difference. No processed foods and sugar. We know that when you have these things, it affects inflammation in the body. Inflammation is something that we're just learning about that has a lot to do with our physical health, but also our emotional health. So inflammatory compounds that increase inflammation in our bodies, bad emotionally, bad physically. Certainly our weight has a lot to do with that as well. So, and there's more and more research that's going into looking at the microbiomes, the interaction between the gut biomes and the brain, as well as inflammation I referred to. And there's other studies that I encourage you to go online and look up a lot of the research that's been done on this. We can't go into it all now, but N is for nutrition. What is, well, definitely I won't talk about the supplements, but these are some of the ones that have been studied, and there's many references, and some of you are using some of these supplements already, but there are supplements that can make a difference to inflammation levels in our body, that can really make a difference to hormonal levels, to the antioxidants and so forth. So look them up, and certainly you'll find that some of them can make a difference. Again, not well researched, many of these, but more and more studies that show the benefits of many of these supplements. E, though, N-E, exercise. Now, exercise we know has a lot of benefit for emotions. We've known that for a long time. And it does improve metabolism. It balances our physical and our emotional system. You know, it stimulates the release of endorphins, which is hormones in our brain that actually improve our mood. It lowers stress hormones like cortisol and other hormones that have a lot to do with our mood. So if you exercise, and the recommendation, you know, is a minimum of maybe 3 or 4 times a week, half an hour to an hour. I'm actually doing close to an hour every day right now, and I would miss that if I don't do that. But boy, does it make a difference. Not only do we get the endorphins, but we sleep better. We feel more confident in the things we do. Our confidence improves. It reduces inflammation. It gets our blood flowing better. When your cardiovascular system's working better, you feel a lot better emotionally, as well as, of course, helping your heart, helping your brain, helping your whole body when you do these things. So exercise. Water. We haven't talked about water very much often when we talk about good health, but my wife Jackie's done some research on water and the benefits of water. Data that's come from the Adventist Health Studies, which Blue Zone's appreciated and recognized that it really increases longevity. And Jackie did studies specifically on water and showed that if you drink a minimum of 5 or 6 cups of water a day throughout the day, your blood flows better, you reduce your rate of heart attacks, of CVA, brain strokes, and so forth. But it also does a lot for your emotions. When you drink more, when you avoid the sugar and soda and fruit juice, alcohol, when you swim, if you swim more, if you do hydrotherapy, use water for therapy. You know, I enjoy fish. It's so relaxing to watch fish, and I think it's brought more relaxation to me than many other things. A patient yesterday showed me her avocado growing in water and how therapeutic it is to watch that avocado plant grow. And Jackie mentions this negative ions. I haven't really researched that, but she encourages when we walk in the morning to walk by the ocean down here or the harbor, and looks for the negative ions, not to see them, but recognizes the negative ions that comes from oceans and streams and waterways really has a benefit on our emotions. So another area to explore in terms of what we might do. Now we could talk about sunlight and vitamin D for a long time. This is one of the vitamins that you read about in our media almost every day these days, because there's more and more recognition that vitamin D not only has benefit for pretty much every system of the body, but it also improves if you have an adequate vitamin D level, which is much higher than you'll often hear recommended. Jackie has those levels down, I think 30 to 50 nanograms, which is often a rating that's not quoted by orthodox medical folks. But you have to take an adequate vitamin D level, which you can measure in your blood to get the benefit physically, but also for your depression and anxiety. It improves our immunity in general. Jackie has me taking 50,000 international units of vitamin D every week, just a once a week dose. But you got to take enough. You can get it from the sunlight, and we have plenty of sunshine here in Hawaii. Don't stay up too long, only several minutes, but you can get adequate vitamin D from that. T stands for temperance. This new started decades and decades ago, and temperance was a more accepted term. But essentially, it means balancing things, right? And a nice balance, avoiding things that are clearly harmful, that can be demonstrated harmful, like alcohol, cigarettes, mind-altering drugs. But caffeine, which is, of course, a pretty generalized addiction, but caffeine definitely plays into to the feelings of being anxious, tense, so forth. For a long time on psychiatric units, and I've had the chance of starting several now, we've always not had caffeine available to patients because it increases agitation, anxiety, and whatever. So reducing caffeine, cutting out caffeine definitely can be very helpful for anxiety. But also if we balance our food and appetite, it's very important. So temperance applies to anything that's harmful, but pretty much everything in moderation is helpful. Air, fresh air does a lot physically, but it does a lot for our mood, our sense of energy, focus, relaxation. Indoor air worse, outside air fresher and better. And breathing exercises, I don't know if you're used to doing them, but put your hand on your belly and your hand on your chest. Take deep breaths. The hand on your stomach should be moving more than your chest. In other words, diaphragmatic abdominal breathing is more relaxing, is more healthy, is better physically and emotionally. So if you do breathing, recommend like breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, then hold it for 1, 2, 3, 4, let it out 1, 2, 3, 4, and repeat that many, many times can be very helpful for your anxiety levels. Rest, of course, sleeping, good hygiene, and you've seen recommendations for not having TV in your bedroom, not doing anything but maybe things that are more restful, relationship things maybe can happen in bed, but otherwise better to not do things in your bedroom, not do your reading exciting books, even relaxing books. Try to get 7 or 8 hours a night. Helps depression, helps anxiety. Do the breathing exercises though. Do progressive muscle relaxation things. That it's like hold your wrist tight and then let it go. Hold it tight, let it go. Start with your toes. Go up your muscles throughout your whole body, clenching for a few seconds and letting go. And then doing it again, moving up your body systematic, progressive kind of muscle relaxation can be very helpful for your anxiety. Trust, you know, there's so much conflict these days in trusting authority, and certainly authority we need to stand up to sometimes. But sometimes I think we just need to have a little more trust. We just need to have a little bit more humility and accepting that sometimes people above us know a little bit better. And I don't know, but this might be one of the reasons we have more difficulty in the U.S. because we all like to feel like I know better. And I think having a little more trust in our authority, having the sense of some kind of faith, having follows that we can assemble with in communion and community. Some people, repeat a prayer or rosaries if that's part of the belief over and over again. I was telling your patient, say, what do you do during the day? She said she's been so tense, she's praying all day long. She repeats the prayer over and over again. And clearly it's beneficial for her. And I think something for all of us to think about if we repeat a prayer of whatever your faith would encourage, just the relaxing and repeating and depending upon something higher. For me, that's God, and trusting God and having faith in God and relying on Him is a higher power that I think brings a great deal of relief of anxiety and depression. So if we do experience depression to the level, I think Jane was asking this question before we started, how do you know when you should get help? Usually, I tell patients, we all get depressed at times, we all get anxiety. We might get post-traumatic feelings that we think about something that happened traumatically in the past, and we think about it. What I usually say to folks is when you need to ask for professional help is when you have depression or anxiety or any emotional struggle that interferes with your day-to-day functioning. If it interferes with what you would like to do or normally do day by day, you can't do those things, then you need to ask for help. If it interferes with your enjoyment in life, the normal kinds of things that you would appreciate and enjoy, if it's interfering with that, you need to get some other help. Of course, talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to your pastor, talk to your hairdresser. Sometimes people talk to a taxi driver. Sometimes just letting those feelings out can help. But if it's not helping to do that and doing these things that I've been mentioning under New Start, then it's time to maybe first talk to your primary care doctor, because primary care doctors actually treat more psychiatric conditions than the psychiatrists. They probably treat more depression, 60% of depression with antidepressants than psychiatrists do. So your primary care doctor has a lot of experience in dealing with folks who are depressed and anxious. And only when that becomes more difficult, more impactful in the person's life, then to make a referral to a professional who works in this area all the time, a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And your primary care doctor knows when that is necessary and can make that referral. And they might use psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, medications, various kinds of interventions that can be quite effective for major depression, for generalized anxiety. These are the titles that are used for these conditions: major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. These are in the diagnostic categories that psychiatrists, psychologists, others in mental health work with. And some of us will need to see a psychiatrist and psychologist. And hopefully part of talking about this makes this okay. If it's the same with any physical condition, we can have various levels of pain or various levels of disability. When it interferes with our function, then we need to see a doctor. Emotionally, the same thing. Our emotions are just another part of that whole person. And we shouldn't hesitate to seek some help for that, the same as if we had a broken leg, we seek help for it. So this is just suggesting that this would be a helpful thing to do if we recognize, do it. So let's just to spend a few minutes now. I know I've taken a little bit longer than I planned, but I'd like to kind of hear what maybe some of us would think might be positive actions that we might do from this very quick run through. Instead of just focusing on the negatives, we didn't, I don't think, mention even sometimes listening to the news too much is negative, right? I mean, so much of it is discouraging. So I told my patients, don't listen to the news. I mean, I don't listen to the news. I just look at the headlines. You know, enough comes across my email to tell me what's going on, and I read those things. But if you listen to the news around the clock, you're going to get more depressed, I believe. It's going to add to your anxiety. So that's. So what are some things? Throw out some thoughts that we might do right now that fits any of the things that I've alluded to, or anything else that you found helpful. I know some people saying now that families are together more, they're playing card games more, they're playing table games more, and it's been so helpful for them. What are some other practical ideas, hints, suggestions that maybe you found helpful, or that from our discussion you think could be helpful for right now to do? I'm gonna ask Kathy here. Kathy is someone I was talking to yesterday. Is a good friend because she self-medication, so she comes and sees me quite often. But Kathy, just to start us off, Kathy, tell us what you've been doing that you feel has been helpful to deal with this COVID crisis. I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Mealy. So since COVID started, and the lockdowns were occurring, I mean, we were all hunkered down at home, but as soon as they opened the beaches and parks, we as a family started going to the beach a lot more. We decided to buy a kayak, and so we've been doing a little bit of kayaking, a little bit of surfing. My husband and my older son started spearfishing. So just some things to spend time together as a family, as well as being outdoors, fresh air, like you said, Dr. Mealy, getting our vitamin C, being in the ocean, in the water a lot. And just, yeah, spending a lot more time together.
What about your diet?
Oh, well, my husband and I cut out meat. It's been about 3 years now. So we stopped eating meat. We're doing a more plant-based, but we still eat some seafood. And that's really helped. So for me, I noticed that I don't get as bloated and I'm not as tired. My husband lost some weight when we started the diet as well. And we also added in a lot of supplements. So I take a omega-3 fatty acid. We talked about this the other day, Dr. Mealy. B vitamin, vitamin D, astaxanthin. What else do we take? Yeah, a lot of different. Oh, and probiotics.
Good, yeah. No, Kathy has been inspirational to me because she's taken quite a lot of steps with her diet and exercise and all kinds of things. Kathy's husband is a vice principal of the school, right? And has had to deal with a lot of these issues. But we've all had something to deal with. Please throw out some other ideas of things that have been helpful or positive that you've either been doing, or maybe from our discussion tonight we could learn to do together. So doing devotions together as a family is very good. That's comes under that trust heading. I think if we rely on our belief of a higher power and spend time together as a family. Tammy, thanks for sharing that.
I think one for me, it's kind of a simple one, but music, some relaxing, thoughtful music, especially in the evenings, really helps to bring my bring my levels of frustration or anxiety or whatever I'm feeling, and kind of like relaxes me, and I think prepares for better rest and sleep at night too.
Yeah, definitely so. Music is helpful for all of us, and something Jackie's been trying to push us to do through Holly Cacao is provide music to nursing home folks. It's a little hard right now, but we all know that once we provide music to folks that can be quite out of it, it sort of brings a whole new life to them. So music is a very good one. What else? I see
Shirley
some.
writes yoga, music, yes, exercise, check up on your friends. That connection is really important.
Good, good.
And Kara
Gardening.
has something kind of similar. So it's walking in the neighborhood, but also I'm assuming she meant to write getting acquainted with the neighbors. So it's connecting with your neighbors and exercise.
And gardening, adopting new pets. I think Tammy mentioned as well. I know some people get a lot of benefit from candles and essential oils, and there's quite an availability of those now, but lighting a candle sometimes is relaxing. And there's all kinds of essential oils on the market these days that are marketed for relaxation and dealing with anxiety. What else?
Do a routine called the Miracle Morning.
What's the miracle morning?
So for this year, I decided to have a book a month. So it just happened before COVID, but it actually works out because of COVID. But Miracle Morning is pretty much a morning routine. It's a study that's saying that most people that have more morning routines are more successful, more accomplished in life, and that is called. And so the Miracle Morning is actually called the Savior's Morning. Basically, you have a devotional prayer, which is silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, read, and scribe, meaning write something down, a devotional something. I've been trying to take that challenge on since I read the book. I read the book last year, but I try to keep that going every morning. And because of COVID, I don't have to rush to work now.
So there's an advantage of staying at home, right? We can implement some of these things. By the way, folks, Kenneth is our finance expert. You've got to tune in next week to hear from Kenneth, because he's got some great practical hints for us about finance management. So we look forward to that, Kenneth.
Well, I'm glad to help you guys. I'm glad to talk.
Come on, some other good hints.
I was going to ask, can I ask a question about, there's a lot of people that are having problems with sleeping, insomnia. Like they'll fall asleep, but they get up and it's hard to go back to sleep. Are there any tips or the supplements you were talking about that would help with that?
Yes, there's a number of supplements that claim to help with sleep, and we didn't have time to go through them tonight. If anyone wants that list or the slides in general, maybe write to our Holly Cacao site. What is that address, Jane? If they want a copy of the supplements or of the slides.
Well, I keep saying this, but it really will happen. This recording will be up on our website very soon, in a matter of days. We have it on our YouTube channel. It just hasn't made it to the website. So it'll definitely be there. The supplements, maybe you can give me that list and I can ask JJ if he can put it up as well.
Sure, because if you look over the supplements, I've generally mentioned whether it's good for anxiety or depression or whatever. Most of the ones that are said to help anxiety also help sleep for some people. Mm-hmm. So no supplements or no even sleeping medicines that we prescribe help everybody. But some people, of course, melatonin is very helpful for sleep. So if you take between 3 and 10 milligrams of melatonin a night, melatonin is a hormone secreted by the pineal gland in our brain that's related to our normal sleep patterns. So for some people, melatonin can be very helpful. So you're adding melatonin to your natural melatonin, which might be a little bit low in your brain, to improve the sleep cycle. So a lot of people find that. Some people use valerian root. Valerian root is helpful for sleep, it's helpful for anxiety. Some people use chamomile tea. you can use. Some use SAMe. There's a variety of supplements that, again, are espoused by, there's always commercial encouragement to use some of these things. Most of them don't have a lot of yet, certainly double-blind randomized controlled studies to support, but definitely a lot of ongoing support for it. So there is benefit in a lot of those supplements for sleep. Maybe look over the list when you get to see it and try some. Does anyone have experience with any of the supplements that seem to help sleep more than others?
You probably forgot lavender oil. I do that at night too to help me.
The lavender oil is one espoused by many. Anything else helps anyone else?
Yeah, I think melatonin seems to work pretty well. I think it's probably good to mention too, take it when you are going to be sleeping through the night. Similar to Benadryl, and you want to be careful when you take it, that it's specifically for sleep, not just something that you take at any moment of the day.
What is that? Night? Yeah, thanks, Pastor. Nightly. I can't read it. Is that Judith?
Question. I have a
Hi,
question.
Judith. Haven't seen you for a long time. Yes, question.
If you take melatonin like at 6 o'clock with your dinner, and then you wake up at like 1 o'clock in the night, can you take more melatonin?
Well, it varies from person to person. Some people say they take melatonin even at 9 o'clock and they have a hangover the next day. Other people, like you say, they take it, I think 6 is a little early. For most people, within the hour, you should be feeling some benefit if it's going to benefit at all. So I would tend to recommend you taking it like within an hour of sleep time. Some people take it a bit earlier, some people shorter. If you take it later in the night, hopefully it will last during the night. If you get a hangover from melatonin, you wouldn't want to do that, like wake up at 2, take it, and then you might be quite drowsy the next morning. It really is person dependent. And, the 350 studies that I've done has all been on commercial medications. We don't, and when we have a commercial medication, we pretty much know what the half-life is, what the duration is, what the time to peak trough levels are. And so we can answer those questions a little more based on evidence. With the supplements, it really is very much person dependent. So I would suggest, as I do to my patients, try it. Try taking it at 2 and see what happens. I would generally feel that you're probably going to have a hangover if melatonin works for you at all. But try it and see. Fortunately, melatonin is a natural substance in our bodies, so we don't worry usually about it being overdosed, although if you, of course, took a lot more than 10 to 20 milligrams, you would be risking something. But if you take, some people respond to melatonin at 1 milligram a night. So, always the lowest effective dose is the best policy, but you have to try for you what works. And Pastor Enoch, who's speaking the week after next, folks, so you've got to tune in then. Pastor Enoch had a long experience at a center that espouses a lot of these New Start ideas. My uncle taught there for a number of years, and so we know a lot of those ideas, but it's true, Benadryl, diphenhydramine, helps a lot of people sleep. So some of my patients, we prescribe diphenhydramine, 25 milligrams or 50 milligrams, and that's all they use to sleep. And Benadryl is an antihistamine, right? It helps with allergies, but it also makes you sleepy. Many antihistamines make you drowsy. When you take like a seasick pill, Dramamine, you can get sleepy, which often helps if you're seasick. But the Benadryl is often enough for many people to get an adequate night's sleep. So got to try and see. And Don't take too much of it, but 25 to 50 milligrams will often be adequate for people.
Should all these be discussed with your doctor before you start, or
It's
okay to do
certainly
it?
it's certainly preferable to discuss with your doctor, because some of these interact with the medicines that you're on, so that you know, and to be really honest, many of your doctors will not know many of these things, so they have to be more looked up in, you know, in references and so forth. But it is always wiser, if you're on a number of medications, to discuss a supplement with your doctor, for the fear that those interactions can occur. You know, if you have a CYP3A4 or CYP2D6 metabolic pathway and you're taking medication in that same pathway, they can interact in ways that either reduce the efficacy or increase it to toxic levels. So it is always better to discuss with your doctor.
Dr. Mimi, I wanted to follow up on something you had said. You said that when your symptoms kind of interfere with your daily, I forget what you said, but your normal enjoyment of things that you used to enjoy and your daily activities, that's when you should see, you know, talk to your doctor. I feel like a lot of people would say, you know, it has been affecting them. How sustained does it have to be? And also, like, if you talk to a doctor, is it just medications that they would give? And if so, like, is it hard to overcome any of these symptoms without medication?
So usually we say, if you're fairly significantly depressed for 2 weeks or more, so if you feel quite a lot of depression, disruptive depression, at a fairly high level, most of the day, every day, pretty much for 2 weeks or more, that's when we would call it major depression. And if you have major depression, usually it will interfere with your functioning. In fact, in medicine, unless it does interfere with your functioning, we don't call it major depression. So you can have those symptoms for 2 weeks or more. And for depression, it's usually 5 or more of those symptoms we mentioned. So if you have 5 or more of those symptoms every day, nearly all day for 2 weeks or more, and it interferes with your function or your quality of life, it is probably time to talk to a doctor. Now, the problem with right now, everyone is disrupted in your work and everything. So you've got to balance it with, you know, would this be happening if it wasn't COVID and whatever? So, you know, and sometimes talking to your doctor will help clarify that. But that's the definition for major depression. Generalized anxiety disorder is usually anxiety that's fairly intrusive, 5 or more of those symptoms. No, sorry, 3 or more of those symptoms, but lasting, say, 6 months or more, interfering with your functioning, we would call generalized anxiety disorder. And that's a time to see a doc. Now, it depends on the orientation of your doc. Normally, I would say, if your symptoms seem to be related more to things going on in your life, you're divorced, you're losing your job, you're losing your house, you're some kind of disruption in your life, a therapist might be the first place to start, because it's talking about how do you deal with these real stresses occurring in your life. If you're like the lady that I saw today, who has coped for 30 years doing all kinds of wonderful things, but suddenly has become depressed, and there's no new stressors except the heavy workload that she's carried, which I'm sure has contributed, but she's feeling depression that seems to be not necessarily related to any particular stressors that are occurring in her life. I told her today that there's probably genetic, biological, neurotransmitter factors that are inducing that depression. And for that, there are more physiological things that you should do. So I encourage you to do some exercise. I encourage you to get into the fresh air. And I encourage you to do breathing exercises like I was suggesting. Physical oriented things that might make a difference. And if they're not working, an antidepressant medication or medications that help depression. And there's many, and we've done research on many of those, and we know that they can work. So someone who's quite severely depressed, And certainly if they're feeling a lot of hopelessness, if they're having some suicidal thoughts, they really need to be on a medication quite quickly. We shouldn't be just playing around, because people are killing themselves today at higher rates, particularly younger people we know. So we don't want to just say, oh, just go for a walk or something. We got to intervene more seriously with a more serious condition. And that's what we're available to do. And we shouldn't hesitate to encourage that when the condition is serious. Yeah. I know we've run out of time, I think. And
I know. Did you have prizes? I think we talked about some questions and prizes.
Let's do prizes, and then if you want to stay on and ask other questions, I'll stay as long as we need. But we have 3 books here. This book, which you can see, what does it say?
Mind easing.
So ask a question, Jane. See who wins.
Okay.
Mind easing.
So the questions we came up with. Whoever puts it in the chat box first. So let's establish the rules, right? Name 4 symptoms of anxiety. 4 symptoms of anxiety. See how good of a student you guys were. There was more than 4, but just 4 symptoms, right? Anyone writing them in chat, on the chat? Let's see. I know we have fast typers in here. Okay, here's Shirley. Variable, can't focus, lack of sleep, irritable. Dr. Mealy, how does that sound?
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yep, that's good.
Yeah?
Yes. Healing
Okay.
depression for Shirley. How are you going to get it to them?
Is Joanne still here? Joanne, I asked you this every single time. Can we coordinate through you? She's in the office, in the church office, and we can coordinate pickup or sending it if they're not local.
Yes. No one contacted me from last week's prizes, though.
Oh, it's a prize, so if they don't, they lose.
So do you
Well,
want
I have their names, so if they do call this week, that's fine too, or next week.
Okay.
Phone number 2?
988-4343. 988-4343.
Okay. Next book.
No, you just did the mind easing. That was the first book, wasn't it?
Sorry. Next book.
Okay, who won that one?
Shirley.
Okay. Thank you.
And this next book is called Healing Depression for Life. And here is the question. How many glasses of water per day should you drink? There's 5 to 10. That was actually the exact thing in your slideshow, but we also have 8, which is also 5 to 10. 6, 8 to 10. The first one was the acetonides.
Good.
Okay.
And the last.
The last book, Feeling Good, the New Mood Therapy. And here's the question. Just even me knowing this ahead of time, I wasn't sure exactly what the answer was, but so let's see. What percentage of the population is experiencing significant anxiety right now? 40%?
Yes.
Was it 40? I had it as 2/3, no?
No, 40%. That's right.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I had it wrong. Great. So Alvin got that.
Thanks, folks. Thanks for listening. So give Joanne a call, 988-4343, and arrange how to get your book.
You guys were good listeners. There was a lot of people with, and then Kenneth had 80%. That might be the real number, huh?
A little sarcastic.
Could be the real number. So Jane?
As Dr. Mealy mentioned before, Kenneth McGinnis will be our financial expert for next week. So be sure to come back next week. He'll talk about some planning and managing resources and hopefully some practical things we can do to thrive during this time. He has promised us that we could thrive financially during this time. And for everyone else, we will conclude our actual presentation, but Dr. Mealy has said if you want to stick around and ask other questions, we didn't get to do a lot of just general questions. So if you want to do that, he's willing to stick around. But thank you so much for coming. I hope this was helpful. I hope there were some proactive things you could do to help any anxiety or stress or depression you might be feeling right now. And we hope to see you again next week.
Thanks so much, folks. Thanks for joining. So who has a question?